What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer. I've long been a skeptic of Doomfist being the next Overwatch hero, so today I'm finally going to go into detail as for why I not only don't think he'll be Hero 25, but also why he may never become a playable hero at all. So let's start by looking at recent events. One which you guys maybe haven't heard of is a YouTube video uploaded by Ars Technica featuring Overwatch game developers Jeff Kaplan and Jeff Goodman. In it, they answered some fan questions about the Overwatch universe. One question, it so happened, was about Doomfist. Let's take a look at how this went down.
Will Doomfist be the next hero? Doomfist would be sweet. I think it'd be sweet.
I think Doomfist would be super cool.
He's clearly shown his prowess in New Bonnie recently, so I think he might be a little OP. We put him in, but we'll see what happens.
Doomfist would purely be ranged attacks, I think.
Sniper of some kind?
Yeah, sniping, probably. And then I think magic. He would use magic right. And range attacks.
Now, obviously, this is them jokingly giving an answer, but some specific things stood out to me. In particular, the thing Jeff says towards the end. Goodman, that is, not Kaplan.
I think he might be a little OP. We put him in, but we'll see what happens.
I think he might be a little OP, then corrects himself, would have been. This is an incredibly key component to my thought process about Doomfist, the issue of being able to actually balance him. Now, I'll put that topic on hold for a bit, and get back to it a little later when I discuss some other relevant information regarding it. The other thing in this video, though, is that it's actually kind of odd that Jeff and Jeff were open to saying anything about Doomfist at all. Generally, businesses and politicians will just say, no comment, or somehow otherwise be hush-hush about things they don't want to have to take a stance on. But here, we see them both mention the idea of Doomfist as being cool, and then even sarcastically joke about his abilities at the end. This could just be me, but I feel like they would be speaking a bit more carefully if Doomfist was actually to be the next hero. But this video is just the tip of the iceberg, so now I'm going to shift to talking about the much more renowned recent incident, which is the PTR 1.13 build name. I've already talked extensively on this in one of my videos, so I encourage you all to check that out if you haven't already. But here's my generalized understanding of what transpired. The build name for each version of Overwatch serves as a simple way to describe what's new and/or significant about that version. For example, the previous version, which introduced the Horizon map, featured the build name of Moon. So, looking at the 1.13 build, which is called Doomfist/Summer Games, or should I say was called, since they've since patched the name out, it would seem logical to deduce that the name is referencing the upcoming hero and event. However, Blizzard isn't nearly that stupid, and thus would never so simply state the exact name of the next hero in plain text like this. The comparison I like to make is if the US government had referred to the Manhattan Project during World War II as literally Big Atomic Bomb. Instead, the name Doomfist here is most likely a code name for whoever the next hero actually is. Now, this might be a poor choice of code name, since it's literally the name of Overwatch's currently most anticipated edition, which is why I suspect that it was never even intended that the public learn of this code name in the first place. Think of it this way. The developers at Blizzard are well aware of the hype and anticipation regarding Doomfist, and thus, as a sort of inside joke between themselves, they decided to internally codename the actual next hero as such, simply for their own amusement. But then, by some accident, this codename made it into the public, and given how the community responded and the unintended hype it generated, Blizzard had no choice but to patch it out of the PTR so as to both remove the misleading effect it caused, as well as prevent people from having an extra motivation to snoop around in the game's files any more than we already do. While this specific instance is one which is surely highly debated, it is clear that the alternative to the situation I just presented would be that Blizzard just made the greatest mistake in Overwatch history as the result of some extreme carelessness and stupidity on their part. And given that I think most of us are well aware of how poorly these words describe the Blizzard we know and love, I'm sure we can for the most part reason that this isn't what actually happened. While I admit that there's no guarantee that my explanation is 100% accurate, it's far more likely than the alternative. However, while there is a lot to learn from the words of developers and possible leaks, I believe there is much more to be learned from just looking at the big picture. First and foremost, let's take a look at our previous hero. Like Doomfist, Orisa was linked to Numbani, and, in a matter of fact, directly to Doomfist himself. Clearly, during the build-up process of Orisa, Blizzard was intentionally messing with our expectations by teasing the possibility and likelihood of her actually being Doomfist, given the map correlation and the recent attention we had with regards to Terry Crews in the community. So, in short, Doomfist literally just played a role in the Overwatch story. Giving him another role, let alone making him in fact be the next hero, would be to attribute an absurd amount of attention to just one hero for way too long of a time period. We would literally be getting 2 Numbani-based heroes in a row, which, when you take into account the 4-month hero release cycle, means that 8 months in a row would be focusing on the story taking place on only one of the now 15 different Overwatch maps. Some maps, such as Ilios and Oasis, still have no connected heroes as of right now. Not even Sombra during her lengthy ARG held the spotlight this strongly for that long of a period of time. She was always there in the background, occasionally popping up with another clue, but she was never the main focus of things as immensely as Doomfist will be if he were in fact to be the 25th hero. Furthermore, looking past just the story of the game, adding Doomfist would jeopardize the balance of actually playing the game. I certainly don't doubt the potential for Doomfist to snugly fit in somewhere on the hero roster, but he's far from what we need right now. Again, calling back to what I talked about in one of my previous videos, right now the thing we need most is a new healer character. And second to that would be some kind of defensive based hero, ideally to stand as a counter to heroes like Genji and Pharah. Now, I don't know about you, but the idea of Doomfist and his role in the game screams tanky and offensive, and certainly not defense or healer. If Blizzard wanted to add him as a new hero in the game, the very first thing they would consider is what the game needs gameplay-wise. And in this case, the answer to that question wouldn't come in the form of a hero like him. Again, not saying he would never find a place in the game, it's just that he certainly wouldn't find one right now. So up to this point, all the reasons I've given have emphasized the unlikeliness of him being the next hero in the game, and honestly, I wish I could stop there. Despite what it may seem, I really like the idea of Doomfist and would love to see him be playable at some point. However, there's a lot more evidence against him, and unfortunately, it points to the reasonable likelihood that he may never in fact ever see the light of day as a playable hero. The first factor to support this is the fact that Doomfist would most likely be entirely melee based. He may have some kind of rocket fist ability, but for the most part, it's understood that the only way he would fit the idea of Doomfist would be to primarily use his fist as a weapon. And this is the big issue. Blizzard has mentioned on multiple occasions how making a melee-based character has been incredibly difficult for them. Originally, Genji was going to be an exclusively melee hero, and they spent a whole year trying to work out how to balance him for this to work. Ultimately, they had to just scrap that idea, and give him shurikens instead, since they were unable to get the melee system to work comfortably. Now, it should be noted that we do have Reinhardt, whose primary attack is a melee hammer swing, but it works for Reinhardt because he also has his Fire Strike ability, and even more so, his primary role is to hold up his shield. His hammer is certainly a viable weapon for him to use, but it isn't what his entire character revolves around. Doomfist, on the other hand, would almost definitely have to revolve entirely around his gauntlet. And I will mention, I am well aware that as time goes on, Blizzard may find new and better ways to balance heroes that they couldn't come up with before. However, there is actually quite a bit of evidence to suggest that Blizzard, up until recently, was working on Doomfist and trying to make him a playable hero in-game. But ultimately, it seems they gave up on the idea when they seemingly couldn't balance him properly. Let's cover all this evidence chronologically. The first bit of it I consider to be hinting at this is the BlizzyLeaks 4chan post from way back in January of this year. As much as I didn't believe it back in the day, it proved its authenticity by referencing Orisa by her development title of Anchor Tank Ankara, which was later authenticated by Jeff Kaplan referring to her as such. In the same leak post, the author acknowledged Doomfist, but simply said, "It's gonna be a black guy." Since we know the author did in fact have connections to inside intel at Blizzard, this means that they were at least considering and trying to work with the idea of Doomfist at this point in time, but evidently, they're still quite early in his development. Next up comes Orisa's release. Throughout the entirety of her build-up and arrival onto live servers, despite all the mentions of Doomfist in her lore, we never once actually saw him. What I think this means is that at even this point in time, Blizzard was still considering him to be a new hero, or at the very least, had some kind of big plans in mind for him, and thus didn't want to spoil his appearance so soon before his reveal. Also, there is a good chance that they just weren't even sure what exactly he would look like yet, and thus left their possibilities open. The next time Doomfist became relevant again was with the PTR build name leak. As I mentioned earlier, his name was being used, perhaps ironically, as a codename for whoever the 25th hero actually is. However, what I deliberately held off on mentioning was that by using Doomfist's name as a codename, it may mean that he will never in fact be a developed hero. The reason being is that having the codename of one hero be the verbatim name of an actual hero from later down the line could only lead to immense confusion on the development side of things. Thus, the developers were likely only permitted to make Doomfist the used codename because Blizzard already knew that he wouldn't ever be developed further down the line. Once again, this is delving a good bit into the realm of speculation here, but I believe that is one of the most logical deductions to be made given the information we have. And finally, we have the Ars Technica video again. Getting back to what Jeff said about Doomfist being OP, I'm not sure whether he intended to spill a bit of information or not, but it certainly sounds like Blizzard's stance on Doomfist, at least for right now, is that he simply wouldn't work in the game as a playable hero. Furthermore, the fact that both Jeffs feel comfortable enough to talk about him means Blizzard likely has a definitive stance on him at the moment, and sadly, it seems likely that stance isn't in favor of him making it into the game. However, even if he isn't playable, I think there is certainly some hope for him. Doomfist holds a huge position in the game's lore and fanbase. Because of this, in the unfortunate case where he never becomes playable, I'm certain Blizzard will work him into either a comic, cinematic, or something. And also, things change. Maybe one day, despite what we can see right now, they will find a way to add him as playable in the game. But if you want my honest stance on the matter, right now I believe that if we do see him as playable, it won't be for a very long time. I know a lot of people are predicting him as being revealed at BlizzCon, and until recently I held that view as well. But now I'm starting to doubt even this possibility, simply from the things we've seen up to this point. In a way, I do hope I'm wrong, but given the evidence, that's the conclusion I've come to. So there you go. That's all my evidence for why he certainly isn't next, and sadly, may never appear for a long time, if ever. Regardless of whether you agree or disagree, please comment below with your thoughts about this. Also, don't forget to vote in today's poll card. Thank you all for watching through to the end, as I know it's a lot of information to get through. If you did enjoy the video, then be sure to hit that like button, and also, I'd greatly appreciate it if you subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and click that bell icon to keep up with all my content. This is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, always look at things from every angle before making a conclusion, and have a great day.